fun program. We had such joy making it for you, and we're so sorry the sound system isn't the best, but do sit back, enjoy your imaginary mint julep, and away we go, Rick. Thank you.
Right here, his name is Paul Revere, and there's a guy that says, oh, I swear.
Everyone sing along. Everyone sing along.
Thanks, President Julie. Dale Romans grew up in the south end of Louisville, a middle child of 3 boys. He graduated from Butler High School in Shively, a few miles west of Churchill Downs, where he worked with his dad, a trainer, and Dale's son Jake now does the same, and sees a man who cares about people as much as he does about horses, and he's pretty good with horses. He's a neck and neck for all-time leading trainer at Churchill, where he employs 50 people. More than 4,000 times in his career, his horses have either won or finished second. He was honored 9 years ago with an Eclipse Award for Outstanding Trainer, won a Preakness 10 years ago with Shackelford, beat American Pharoah with Keen Ice in the Traverse Stakes 6 years ago, won the world's richest race, the Dubai World Cup, won the Breeders' Cup Turf with Little Mike. His horses have placed 4th twice and 3rd once in his 11 Derby starts. We're thrilled to have him today, along with John Bowl, who's busy preparing for Oaks Derby tomorrow and Saturday. John, and he's had an equally illustrious career in broadcasting. winning nearly 100 Emmys and more than a dozen Edward R. Murrow Awards for his terrific reporting, placing him tops in his field. John anchors the evening newscast at Wave 3 News, and his work this past year in particular has been Derby winning strong, helping our community through the pandemic. John ran the Kentucky Derby Festival mini marathon last week and has completed 11 Ironman competitions. Welcome, Dale and John. Take it away.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Ken. There are two kinds of resumes in life. There's the one that Ken just rattled off so well about Dale. And then there's the other resume, which is what kind of a person you are. And I know I was really excited when I found out that I was going to be involved in this with Dale, because I can tell you that every newsroom in this city values him like you would not believe, because he's such a fantastic person. Dale is the guy that no matter what horse-related, racing-related story happens, you say, hey, go get a soundbite from Dale Romans. And he's always accommodating, and he always gives us the best soundbite of the day on any topic. We could send a photographer down to get a soundbite with Dale on troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, and we get the best soundbite when it comes to that. So we want to bring aboard here Dale Romans right now. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in his life and a little bit about Derby. Hey, Dale, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks. Y'all got me feeling pretty good about myself today.
Yeah, well, that's the point. That's the point of it. No, we want to pick your brain a little bit, because you are so candid and real of a person when we talk about different things. And I think when I was thinking about your life and all that, I wanted to ask you, you started off by walking horses as a boy, and you've come all the way up here to this with your horses $100 million in earnings plus. But I know there had to be some lean times. I know it took a little bit of time for your career to take off. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the lean times? What were some of the leanest and how you got through them?
Oh, you know what? They were lean, but I didn't know they were lean. I was doing what I love to do. And, I was a pretty good high school football player. My father, he really wanted me to go to junior college, and they were going to take me at Moorhead. And I decided to go the other direction and train horses. So he sent me to Beulah Park and put me in a tack room. It's about a 10 by 10 room with a leaky roof and a heater that half asphyxiated me all the time, and 20 horses when I was 17 years old. And so it was pretty lean back then. And after that, I said, if I'm going to do this, I want to go do it somewhere warm. And I packed my car and I moved to Hialeah, Florida, which was probably the worst city in the nation at the time, in 1985, and went to work for Hall of Fame and greatest trainer I know of is Woody Stevens. I lived it was a 10 by 20 room. And I lived with two other grooms that were there for life. And we had a basset hound living with us. But I didn't know it was lean times. I was happy. It was around some of the best horses in the world. And I don't know how we got to the point of $100 million and 10 Kentucky Derby starters. I don't know where all the time went. But with that being said, I was just as happy then as I am now, because I got to fool with some of the best horses and do what I'm doing right now.
Did you consider any other career? And if you would have, if you weren't a horse trainer, what would you be doing right now? I
never considered anything. I don't anything but this. I don't remember ever wanting to be anything but a thoroughbred racehorse trainer. And so my mother says she took me in the barn four at Churchill Downs to pet my first horse when I was 9 months old. And I just left barn four to come and do this Rotary Club. So I've been there 54 years. And I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. When I first started, though, I thought if I had a 20 horse stable and of claiming horses and could feed my kids and take care of my family, that I would be a success. And I still think people that have those types of stables, if they can stay in the game and they last and they're feeding their family, they're as successful as I am. And I just caught a few good breaks in life.
Okay, what was the turning point? What was the key break that turned you around?
Well, I started winning races at a young age. I was happened to be leading trainer at Turfway Park when I was 20 years old. And those were, they weren't good horses though. And the horses started getting a little better and a little better. There's a couple of key factors that happened in my life. One of them was Pat Day. Pat took a liking to me as a kid, and I was young and he started riding all my horses. And besides it was like stealing when he was riding for you. He was so good and so superior. He taught me so much about how to think about a horse, how to think about a race. And when you start putting your name next to someone like Pat, people come to you. And I really think that was the first big boost to my career. And then they were writing articles, Dale Romans, Pat Day. When they put your name next to him, people say, you're good enough for Pat Day, you're good enough for me. And I started getting a few horses here, and then the stable started to grow. And then there was a day at Saratoga, I'm sitting on a bench. The first year I went to Saratoga, I was 26 years old, and I took 6 horses. And when I was pulling out of the gate, my father said, people like us don't win at Saratoga. And that just fueled me to go up there and try to win a few races. And I took 6 horses, won 3 races at meet. And things kind of took off again because that puts you in the highest level. But when I was sitting outside of racing office one day, Ken Ramsey, which if you're in no horse racing, you know Ken Ramsey, he's the leading owner in history of Kentucky. He sat down next to me. He said, we've been fighting against each other all the time. I think we should join forces. And when that happened, my whole world changed. And he sent me to Ocala, Florida that winter to look at all his babies. And he said, pick out who you like. I'm sending you, Bill Mott, and Wayne Lucas, which put me in high cotton when I was mentioned with those 2 guys, 2 of my heroes in life. And I went and looked at all his babies, and I picked out 2 horses that I really liked. And I talked him into letting me have those 2. One of them was a $100,000 yearling he had bought, or 2-year-old, I think, 2-year-old training he had bought that had a bad tendon and had been off for a year, and it was actually a 3-year-old. And the other one was a 2-year-old that he was going to sell because it had a crooked knee. And I begged him not to sell the horse and let me train it. Well, the 3-year-old was a horse named Roses in May, which won the Dubai World Cup, earned $5.5 million. And the 2-year-old that was the homebred with the crooked knee was Kidness Joy, the only champion I've ever trained. And that trip to Ocala is what's really elevated my career and changed the life of me and my whole family.
You have also had to deal with dyslexia in your life. How did that change things, and how did that make you a stronger person?
Well, I think it gives you a different, your weaknesses, your strengths get stronger and they take over. To this day, I've never sent an email, and it's been pretty publicized that I can barely read and write to this day. I mean, I can read, but I couldn't sit down and read a novel. It'd take me 2 years. Never read a book in my life, never sent an email in my life. But fortunately, I've had good people around me that handle all that for me. And everything I do is verbal. And everybody else picks up the pieces. They read me what I need to hear and tell me who I need to call.
Okay.
That's one thing that goes back to about always being a trainer. This was a great piece of parenting. My brothers are both very educated, both went to traditional schools. And when I went to Butler, it was one of the worst schools in America. And it's the first school I went to mainstream all the time. And by then I'd become a pretty good football player already. And my mother sat me down the first day of my freshman year. And she said, we know what you're going to do. You're going to be a horse trainer. She said, whatever you got to do, just graduate. She said, I'll never ask you about your grades. Play football, tout horses, do whatever you can do to graduate. And I'll never ask about you, but you got to get straight A's in conduct. She said, there's nothing wrong with you to make you act bad. And I think that was, and so back then we knew I was going to train racehorses. But I think that was a great piece of parenting. She knew I was never going to be my intelligence judged on paper.
Okay. If you had to look back on your career so far, and if there was a way of measuring your happiness chemical in your brain, your dopamine, what is the happiest moment that you've had as a trainer in this biz so far?
There's too many to say, because what happens, the happiest day of my life up to in 1987 probably was the day Miss Mindy made in 3,500 at Turfway Park. And I couldn't imagine being happier than I was that day. But then expectations and bars raise, and it's harder to capture that same thing. So then you could go to the first time that I won a stake with Morning Punch, a little $50,000 race at Turfway Park. Now I was a stakes winning trainer. I was really happy and proud of myself. But then it becomes leading trainer at Churchill Downs. I mean, that goes back. My father had a massive brain aneurysm, and he was laying in a hospital bed. And I went up to visit him. The meet was coming to an end, and it was head and head with me and Wayne Lucas. And I started to leave the hospital room, and he called me back in. He said, listen, don't let him beat you. He said, it's too hard to be a leading trainer at Churchill Downs. And every day I wonder what he would think of knowing I was all-time leading trainer at Churchill Downs. But then you got to go up to the Preakness was a big one. I mean, that was to win a classic. I've been third in the Preakness 3 times, but to win it was huge. Then you Dubai World Cup. I mean, you talk about lean times. I was in a little rough spot financially there. It was win or go home, and winning that was huge. And then the most historic win I think I ever have, it'll go down in history though, is the Travers beating American Pharoah with Keen Ice.
Yep.
So to pick one of those, and I left a lot of good times out, but to pick one of those would be impossible. Would be impossible to pick just one.
Okay. I'm every year when I prep for the Derby, I'm always fascinated by the haves and the have-nots and how some people squeak in. We were talking earlier about Tom McCarthy with his one horse, and then you got guys like Todd Fletcher, like 55 Derby starters so far, like 6 times he's had 4 or more starters in the field. When do you get serious, and how heavily is it on your brain in the 1 and 2 year olds with these horses about making the Kentucky Derby? And will I have a horse for the Kentucky Derby?
It dominates my thoughts all the time. And when I start buying yearlings in September of their yearling year, everyone's a Derby horse until they prove they're not. And you start putting them on that trail. And every step along the way, decisions made at the time of purchase at Keeneland in September of their 1-year-old year will determine if they're going to make it to the Kentucky Derby. And there's little decisions made all the way along the way that are so important and so big. You're only going to get 20 out of 20,000 horses born last year are going to make it to the Kentucky Derby. So every decision that when that horse steps out of a stall is an important decision. And then they get up to me and they come to Churchill Downs in April, their 2-year-old year, after being in South Carolina or Ocala, and we start prepping them and they start separating themselves. And it's amazing how the really good ones, the cream, will start to rise to the top. But it's not until you start running them and you can tell who has the grit, determination to be a racehorse, that you can start saying this one might make it. And usually I like to leave the year with 4 or 5 2-year-olds that have broken their maiden that look like they want to run long and think that they're Derby potential horses.
Okay, let's take a look at this this Derby field right here. I mean, you've got Essential Quality 5 for 5. You got a lot of people like me talking about Rock Your World, kind of following the Barbaro path of going turf, winning some turf races, then liking dirt. What? Give us how you assess the field this year. Do you see a strong candidate, or is it more wide open?
Well, I think you take Essential Quality out, it's wide open. It's his race to lose. And a lot of people are really on, like, Rock Your World. He's done nothing wrong. And the California people, I know Bafford's really high on him, respect everything he has to say. And I think that he was very impressed with his race in Santa Anita, which made me start thinking about him a little bit. Then, you got a horse like Highly Motivated at 10-1. If you're going to bet Essential Quality, Highly Motivated just got beat in the neck by him last time. I mean, you have to think that he's a horse that's going the right direction and improving. And Essential Quality is kind of just wanting to maintain. When you're 5 for 5, there's not a lot of movement forward for you. But with that being said, the two of them had a really difficult race last time. They ran their hearts out down to the wire, and you don't know how that's going to help them or hurt them for bouncing back in 4 weeks. If you get past the favorite, I think this is a very interesting Derby, and you can dig around and probably find some really good value.
You know what I think is really interesting, having handicapped this thing now for like 30 years. You remember back in the days of like the late 90s, like Charismatic. I feel like Charismatic might have had like 12 starts before the Derby. Like the horses were having a lot of starts. Now you're looking at 3-0 horses. 3 starts. You had Justify not even racing until age 3. What are your thoughts on how the whole dynamic has changed?
20 years ago, those were automatic throwouts. And now they're major contenders.
Yeah.
And the whole system. So you can even go back further than that. And I don't remember which one, but there was a Triple Crown horse that lost a race in between the Preakness and Belmont. They were running the Derby trial on Tuesday and back in the Derby on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's right or wrong, which way's right or wrong, or what has made the change, but it's definitely been a major change in the way people handle young horses and try to get here.
Have you changed your ways? Remember, it wasn't that long ago where all the key Derby preps were T-minus 3 weeks out from Derby. Then they've kind of moved them at the trainer's, request of maybe 4 weeks out. We have several horses here 6 weeks out is their last race. Have you changed your thoughts on that?
Well, with my 10 horses into the Derby, they've all come in different ways, and they all ran pretty well except for one. I like you. I used to bring them. I brought my 2 horses that were third in the Derby off the grass, both of them before the Derby, when you could do that because you were worrying about graded money and not points. That's very difficult to do today. So I've changed, but you just have to roll with the flow and with every horse train a little bit different. And the way Churchill Downs has set up the point system, though, there's parameters. You have to be there and you have to be ready to run in those point races. And the last 2 rounds are the really important ones to get in. And I think that has a little something more to do with it. I mean, people realize you're not only running the Triple Crown, you're running like 5 hard races because those last 2 preps are so important. And then you got to go through the 3 Triple Crown races. So I think you might see a little less racing before you get to that point.
Okay, a couple little less technical questions here. Do you? I've always wanted to ask you. Do you ever bet on your horses, or do you ever bet on the races?
I haven't made a bet on a horse in 20 years.
Why?
And well, I think it's like an alcoholic owning a bar. I'm there all the time. It's a good way to go broke. We all love our horses. And I'll tell you a quick story about sitting around Saratoga one time. It was me, Bobby Frankel, Billy Mott, and another trainer up there. And it was the last day of the meet. And all of us sat in the back of that great agent, Richard DePass. And we all started putting up money together in a pool and handicapping and gambling. We didn't cash 1 ticket. There was 4 Hall of Famers in there trying to bet. We didn't cash 1 ticket. I told them if they'd put a microphone in it, we'd broke every gambler in America. So, sometimes you can know too much information, but it also seriously, it changes the way I think about developing a horse. I think you'd worry about getting one ready to bet on it or worry about betting. And I more want to worry about developing and trying to get a horse to Triple Crown.
Okay, I would advise anybody watching this to go back to Blood Horse magazine, bloodhorse.com. They had a really great in-depth article on Luis Saez after the disqualification a couple of years ago. First, I want to ask you, Dale, what were your thoughts on the disqualification? Did you agree with it or not?
No, I think it was 100% the right call. I think that it was the only call that could be made. And it's a shame. I felt bad, like everybody. It was gut-wrenching to watch those people, have the roses taken away from them. And it was gut-wrenching for everybody. I mean, you never want to see anybody in that position. But you cannot, the rules are strict and the rules are clear. You can't impede the progress of another horse for any reason. And it was obvious that that's what happened. He actually impeded the progress of a couple of horses. And it wasn't a horse that was eventual winner, but that's not what the rules say. And you have to do the same for every single race, no matter how big it was.
Okay, but what about the other side of the story? Did you watch that tape presentation that the Maximum Security Connections put together, showing that their theory that he was struck from behind by War of Will 2-3 times, and that's what freaked him out and made him jump out? How does that enter into your thinking, or does that even matter?
That didn't happen. It was him coming out in front of, if I'm in their shoes, I'd make me a tape up look the same way. But he ducked out. That was all. For whatever reason it wasn't Louis' fault. It was so quick. It just happened. Louis is one of my good friends. I love the little kid. He's a great jockey and a great person. And I felt bad for him. It wasn't his fault. He got spooked from something down on the inside. The one thing I disagreed with is giving him 15 days. If you're going to judge everything the same, no matter what the magnitude of the race, he should have gotten the same penalty he would have gotten if it was a $5,000 race on the last day, and which would have been 3 to 5 days. I
did a story on that. I did a story on that where I went back and looked at other penalties for other jockeys and did a whole thing on that. Yeah,
I think we talked about that. I think, and you can't have it both ways. Either it's the same for a big race as a little race. That should include penalties. He had a big enough penalty when he lost that $200,000 check.
Yeah. Okay, so this week people have been talking about the post. I'm always fascinated by talks about post positions and all that. Yet 11 of the past 21 winners have been from the 13 gate out. And I've heard people say, and I kind of agree with this, it's like the college basketball tournament. If you get a bad post, good teams play through their bad seeding, good horses run through a bad gate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's going to be different from now on. And we'll talk about it in a second, but I agree. I think the outside's a good place to be because you have over a quarter of a mile before you have to worry back into the turn. So you can make better decisions. When you're down on the inside, your hand's a little forced sometimes. If you get shuffled back, maybe everybody starts coming over it and you want to end up way further back than you want to be. And the one hole used to be the kiss of death because it actually set almost behind the rail. And if a horse broke in, which is the natural instinct of horses, either inside or out, he'll usually break to the direction of the open air. And so a horse would break in a little bit slow behind the one hole. He could end up in the 20 spot down the front side real quick. Churchill actually fixed that. They went and bought a special gate just for the Kentucky Derby that now holds 20 horses. And you don't have the gap between the two starting gates that makes you need so much of a wider track than what we had. So I think that the one hole is not going to be the kiss of death that it used to be. I still wouldn't want it. I'd still rather be outside. I mean, my friend Dick Dutcher, when he came in with Big Brown, he walked up and picked number 20. He said, I got the best horse. The only way he can get in trouble is he breaks slow and somebody buries him. And of course, he was right. He galloped around a lead. And it also forced your hand. Anything on the inside, you can't miss the break.
Right. Okay, that sets up my next question I wanted to ask you, which is what is the best ride or the best performance you've ever seen? And what reminded me of that question was talking about the one hole. I did a documentary a number of years ago on the 125th Derby. And what we did is we did the 10 greatest stories that have ever happened with the Derby. And the 1986 Ferdinand one was one of them because Ferdinand was into one gate and got smashed repeatedly against the rail and spit out the back. And yet they were able to weave all the way back through and win that race. I thought that was probably the most amazing ride I've ever seen in the Derby. What are your thoughts?
Mine, that bird was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And, you know, if that was just the guys guiding Calvin around or what, it was pretty impressive that he had the nerve before he had ever won a Kentucky Derby to stay on the fence and take the gamble that the shortest way around there would open up. He only had to go around one horse out of all of them in the field. I thought that was pretty spectacular. And then you can go to Jerry Bailey's ride on, I can't think of the horse name, Wayne Lucas's horse.
Thunder Gulch? Thunder Gulch?
The one that ran down Cavanier when he just got up by a nose.
Oh, Grindstone,
right. Grindstone. I couldn't think of it. I thought that was a pretty good ride. But, you know, every Derby winner has basically had a good ride because that's a jockey's race with 20 horses going a mile and a quarter. A good jockey, that's where they'll really make a difference.
You know, I find it unbelievable with the talk this week is, you know, will Brad Cox be the first Louisville-based trainer to win the Roses? Why hasn't a Louisville-based trainer won the Kentucky Derby yet? That kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, Churchill before simulcasting was a totally different place. It had mom and pop operations. There was Derby week and then there was the rest of the year. And people don't realize that the legendary racetrack was legendary for 1 week back in the older days before simulcasting. Well, you know, it's a small city. And I don't think that Louisville guys got a shot really to train these types of horses. But lately, I mean, I've run several in the Derby. My friend Greg Foley's run a couple now. Brad's coming along and running some. It's going to happen. If not this year, one of us will get it one year.
How will you spend your Derby day this year on one of the rare times here where you don't have a Derby horse?
Pouting because I don't have one. Now I got a lot of horses running. I want to have fun with it. I enjoy Derby weekend. I like going out there. I like handicapping, even though I don't bet. I'll tell people what I think and have fun. I got a horse in the second race at 11:30 and one in the last race at 8:30. I'll be there all day.
It cracks me up where you guys, trainers and owners, decide to watch the race from. I mean, you're either up in the box or you got Bob Baffert who likes to watch in the paddock, and he jokingly says, "I like to watch in here because if I lose, I got a quick escape route to get out without the media hounding me." What about you? What is your druthers?
I've watched it every race since I can remember. At Churchill Downs at section 319. My box is there now. I used to stand on the steps when I was a kid, and that's where I like to watch my horses. I always watch them live. My father told me a long time ago, you always see it live one time. You can see it on TV over and over and over.
Okay. Well, listen, Dale, thank you very much for joining us here today. You are the best. And I certainly, you know, I'm going to be pulling for Brad Cox, but if he doesn't do it, I sure hope you're there next year.
Thank you, but it's always fun doing stuff with you, and appreciate the Rotary Club having me.
Okay.
Thank you, Dale. We are really, really honored to have you today and just wish you all the best and hope to have you back again sometime soon.
Let's make it an annual event.
Would love that.
Okay.
And John, thank you so much as well. And we'll be watching you, as many of us aren't able to be out at the track this weekend. We'll be watching you live on Wave. So
Okay,
thank
please do. Thank you very much for having me too. It's great. And it's just an added bonus to have somebody like Dale. He's such a great guy.
Yes, absolutely. And your knowledge as well. We really appreciate it. And Ashley, who chairs our speakers committee, thanks for arranging this very special Derby program for our club. We very much appreciate it. As it was announced, next week, our joint meeting will be with the Rotary Club of Lexington. And we're delighted to have as our featured speakers, the Secretary of the Tourism, Arts and Heritage Cabinet, Mike Berry, who you all know, he's a Louisvillian, along with Governor Andy Beshear. So be sure to think of who you can invite to join us for that special program as well. And we will also look forward to receiving your nomination for the Rotarian of the Year. So get that in today or tomorrow. The deadline is fast approaching. And again, wonderful events coming your way, actually in-person events with the zoo and also the other special event that Mike Richardson's put together at the beautiful church and getting together at Boom Boss Pizza. So those are two wonderful opportunities for us to network and join together. And I just want to say to all the Rotarians and our guests, be well and go baby go. Happy Derby. We are adjourned.